Welcome to the Scariest Things podcast, your gateway to the trends and tropes of the horror genre. This is episode 172, and we're talking about our neighbors to the north, Canadian horror.
Take off, eh?
Hello, eh?
I'm Liz Williams, and I'm joined by
Eric Lee.
And Mike Campbell, you hosers.
much closer to Canada than me.
Yeah, oh yeah. Super close to Canada.
Oh, sure, yeah.
5 hours, eh?
Uh-huh. Oh, yeah.
If you don't like Canadian horror, just go watch Letterkenny.
There you go. Exactly.
Canadian stuff there.
Yeah, or Trailer Park Boys.
Yeah.
So...
Or old John Candy movies.
Oh, yeah.
I think it is remarkable how many of movies that end up we come across are actually Canadian and American films. So because you look it up, it's like, oh, a lot of them are filmed in Canada.
Right.
But I think
right.
what we're going to be going for are things that sort of touch on the essence of being a Canadian horror film.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, Canada was kind of like the Philippines in the 1960s and 70s where all the exploitation films went. In the 1980s, everybody in a pre-Vancouver, which obviously became the hotspot for filming everything in the 1990s and 2000s. In the 1980s, everything got filmed in Canada because it was just cheaper, eh?
Cheap.
It was so cheap.
Dollar,
Yeah,
eh?
yeah. You can get your crullers and a sixer, and you're off to the races in Canada. Eh? No, it was super cheap, and so that's why I think, to your point, Eric, that's why everybody went up there. Was they could do it. It was on the cheap. And then they could bring it back to the States and release it.
And nobody knows cheap like horror movie directors.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And half of Canada, you can double for, most of, the United States.
Although every time that they try and make Toronto look like New York, it's like, it's too clean. Or Vancouver, make it look like New York.
Where's that pizza rat? Yeah.
There's mountains. There's you can't, but yeah, Lord knows. I mean, it still exists today, but now it's actually a much more professional. The Vancouver recording scene is, it's got to be like third or fourth in like after Hollywood and Mumbai. It's got to be way up there for
and Atlanta.
Atlanta.
Yeah.
The Hollywood of the South.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
they don't have, and then they took it from us.
Yeah, but
they don't have pizza rat. They have poutine rat.
Poutine rat. Oh my God, that's probably like
have you ever had poutine?
Nice.
I had veggie poutine in Toronto, and it was damn good.
Yeah,
I've never been to the east coast of Canada. I've only been to Vancouver and Whistler.
It was not. I did not have vegan poutine. I had the veggie poutine because I did have the cheese curds on it.
Yeah,
it was just
is it even poutine if it's not?
The gravy was veggie. It was veggie gravy, cheese curds.
I mean, traditionally, is it like a sausage gravy?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Meats.
Yes.
Yeah, it's like I'm pretty sure it's a beef. I think it's a beef gravy. On French fries.
I think it's okay to pour the calories on if you're a Canadian because you gotta get some insulation for those cold winters.
That's right. Yeah. And it's a good way to sop up all that beer you just drank.
Yep.
So Liz,
what do they drink? Molson, Labatt?
Yeah, that's
Molson.
Right. Oh, I have a Molson, eh?
Yeah.
We're gonna get killed by our Canadian audiences.
I know.
So Liz, when you went hunting for movies of Canadian origin, what were the kinds of things that you were looking for?
Well, I knew one off the top of my head because there's a pretty prolific Canadian director and then my favorite Canadian actor. It's not David Cronenberg.
Oh, okay. Because this also
one.
Could be called the David Cronenberg convention here.
I have no Cronenberg.
Okay.
Cronenbergless.
I was the same way. I was like, this is kind of like talking about Halloween films without talking about Halloween. This is talking about Canadian films without talking about David Cronenberg.
I got a Cronenberg.
Okay.
So we'll
do
touch
not
on
have a
that.
Cronenberg, but I have one of my other favorite directors who doesn't do too much horror. I have his most horrific, and it's more of a thriller, but definitely had to be included. I have a very, very polarizing new film that's Canadian, and then I have one of my favorite slasher flicks from the 80s.
Woo! Yeah.
So we're also doing a Canadian survey without Martyrs showing up, it sounds like.
That's right.
Well, Martyrs is a co-production.
And we've talked Martyrs to
French
death.
and Canada.
Right,
So,
right.
I've got Canadian directors, majority Canadian cast, filmed in Canada. It looks like Canada, well, except for one because it's not outside. It's just Canada. I mean, I don't know what else like makes Canada. Since Canada seems to be a knockoff for everywhere else. What is like a truly I mean, when they're filming, every place, like what we say, like, oh, where's that? It's Canada.
Yeah.
It's Canada.
You had to have.
I don't mean to knock off as a bad place, Canadians. They
You had
will
to
not get mad at me because they're very polite. But
maple syrup, an axe, and a flannel shirt.
Yeah.
You had to have
that
those.
could also be like Buffalo, New York. You know, I don't know.
and a toque.
And a toque, eh?
But
like a Mountie.
So I think most of the ones that I have, there were some themes that I went for. Cold and snowy.
Yeah.
I think that feels Canadian. Vast and isolated.
Yep.
I think is another thing when you think about
I got
Canada
cold and snow in 2 out of 3.
And then, I also went culturally relevant, clearly identified as Canadian.
Okay.
That they call out that we're in a Canadian city.
Right.
So those are some things that I wanted to make sure that I keyed in on. And
any of mine actually mention what city they are in?
They do or they don't.
I don't think they do.
Okay. Yeah.
No, I don't really think they do.
So Liz, why don't you go ahead and you lead off? What have we got?
All right. Then I'm going to start my 3 in order of release date.
Mm-hmm.
And I am going to pick the 1983 Canadian slasher film Curtains.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
I watched this last year.
I love Curtains.
Okay.
So good. Yeah.
It's so good. It's so bad. It's so good.
You're going to have to school me on Curtains. This one.
You've never seen Curtains?
I've not seen Curtains.
I guarantee you.
You've seen the poster.
I guarantee you've seen the GIF of the old woman ice skating. With the scythe.
Knife.
Yeah.
Oh, that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, hey, ice skates. Okay. There you go. That's super Canadian.
Oh, totally.
It's outside and it's cold. So it's directed by Richard Kupka. It's a screenplay by Robert Guza, and it stars Canadian actor John Keith Vernon. British actress Samantha Egger, Linda Thorson, who's Canadian, Lynn Griffin, Canadian, and Leslie Donaldson, Canadian. And this is about the IMDb plot summary is: entering an asylum to prepare for a movie role, a young woman is double-crossed and left behind by her director. With 6 new starlets auditioning for her role at a remote mansion, a mass murderer seeks revenge. So this movie is ridiculous. It's so full of 80s. It's, just a bunch of like sexy starlets in a mansion to get that part. It's a legit casting couch that then goes horribly, horribly wrong. And yes, Mike is exactly right. You've seen the GIF of the ice skating, like hag looking woman with a scythe who is going to kill the beautiful starlet. And one by one, heads start to roll.
All right.
This film took about 3 years to get made because there were problems between the director and the producer. And then it ended up, the director ended up not being credited. He was credited under a pseudonym after it finally got made. It's inspired by Giallo films, and the director envisioned it as an art house thriller, while the producer wanted a more straightforward slasher film. So that was their conflict. It took approximately 2 years.
I think the producer won out on that one.
Yeah, it's not an art film.
There's nothing arty about it.
Not at all.
So this sounds like what it was, like a 2-week shoot, 3 year.
Yeah, probably
caught in the process.
Yeah, they had to get Dean Wormer. That was the real pull. Getting Dean Wormer. I mean, that's Well, as soon as I saw that, I mean,
Animal House.
You see Dean Wormer, John Vernon, and you're like, yeah, this film is from 1983 for sure.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. So it premiered actually in the United States, but then got released in Ottawa. and it had largely negative reviews from the critics, but
What? No.
it earned $1 million. But then it developed a cult following. That's how I came to see it, thanks to my friend Todd. And, it's been restored and put on Blu-ray. So if you have not seen Curtains, tons and tons of snowmobile, so it's set in Canada, I guess.
Quintessential
but they never
Canadian.
really say.
Remote lake cabin.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well,
Yeah.
mansion.
Mansion.
It's
yeah.
a mansion.
Mansion.
Because how else could you fit the 5 ladies in there?
That's right.
Multiple casting calls at the same time.
Right.
At the same time.
Perfect.
Yeah. It's really
Nothing-
bad. It's really bad.
It's so
but
bad
it's
it's good.
so good.
Okay.
Yes.
All
Yes.
right.
It's so bad it's good. I think it's canon horror, so I'm surprised you haven't seen it, Eric.
Curtains,
I knew
no.
Mike would see it.
Oh yeah.
So-
Hell yeah. Yeah.
Add Curtains to your list.
There's no
and
bottom to Mike's
That's
well.
true.
There is not.
Right.
And you've
Absolutely
probably
not.
seen the poster. You Google that later, and I guarantee you.
Oh yeah. Yeah. You've definitely seen the poster.
Yeah, it has like a face and like a little girl pulling apart the curtains, and it looks like they're like coming down from the face.
We will post the poster to the
Yeah,
website
we can post
under
the
the movie posters we love.
Okay.
I do love
Yeah.
this poster. It's a good one.
I like it. Yeah. I
Oh,
think it's
that.
great.
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally.
Yeah,
Yeah. Okay. Mm-hmm.
Eric-
Yeah.
Eric's down. He's
Okay.
down
It's-
with curtains.
You can picture the box in the video store.
Oh yeah,
from
100%. Yeah.
childhood.
Yeah, I don't know why I stayed away from this for so many years.
Because it's
but
not good.
Yeah, don't give me shit if the first time you saw it was last year. Come on.
maybe the year before.
I think I
it was,
probably
it was
first
a
saw it 2 years ago.
It was a COVID thing.
Okay.
So that's actually so funny you should say that. Very quick story is that this is the last film I watched with people. It was March 2020. It was with Gwen, our
Okay.
friend Todd. Gwen was in town, and we were like, are we supposed to be wearing masks? Are they going to be able to get home? Like, we didn't know what was going on. So we felt like we were having like a very, in secret get together to all watch Curtains.
Good way to
you
start
go.
COVID.
Yep. Good. It was a good way.
Okay, yeah.
So,
Cuddle up,
Curtains.
watch curtains.
Cuddle
Yeah.
up with Dean Wormer. All right, I am going to talk about a film from 1977 that is also new to me, thanks to Shudder. This just recently popped up on Shudder, and it is one that I had stayed away from, not because I had any inkling as to what it was or what it wasn't. I didn't know a whole heck of a lot about it, other than some people had billed it as a sort of low-rent Deliverance. This is the 1977 Canadian horror thriller film directed by Peter Carter, starring Hal Holbrook. Yeah, that Hal Holbrook. This is also was released in Canada as The Creeper, but the name you may know it under is Rituals. This film, I'm here to tell you, I think is better than Deliverance.
Whoa.
No
But
joke.
is it still the same quote unquote twist as Deliverance? Is it?
No,
is that
it's
what we're getting. Okay, all right.
It's same setup, but it's got a horror element to it, which Deliverance didn't really have. Other than Deliverance was horrifying.
yeah.
This film involves five doctors, 5 surgeons who are all medical school cohorts, and they go on a week-long retreat deep in the wilderness of northern Ontario over the summer, and they have to fly in on a seaplane, land in the lake, get all their crap out. They are going to be by themselves. There are no radios. There are no cell phones. There is no way out. You are in the wilderness for the week. They, of course, the first night they're there, they're all, they all have these very sort of archetype characteristics amongst them. There's the greedy surgeon. There's the sort of bumbling surgeon. There's the arrogant surgeon. There's the humble surgeon.
And I assume the humble surgeon is the one is he your main protagonist follow?
Right, and it's Hal Holbrook, of
Yeah.
course,
Right, of
the
course.
great Hal Holbrook. But the first night,
AKA Abe Lincoln.
Abe Lincoln, yep. They the first night around the campfire, they all they get stoned, they get drunk, they get more drunk. They wake up the next day, all their boots are gone. Their
Nice.
boots are gone. They're stuck in the wilderness. And then they discover that one of the five of them died that night and was strung up that night.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, and so it's 100%, 110% a survival story, and even Hal Holbrook noted how physically demanding it was. There's a scene where he has to pull this guy up the river, and he said it took them 5 days to shoot it. I mean,
Whoa.
when you watch the film, you're physically exhausted because they're climbing, they're swimming, they're drowning, they're falling down.
It's deliverance.
It's deliverance, but it's like
With the
deliverance.
supernatural twist.
Not a supernatural twist.
Oh, okay.
There is somebody or multiple
Something.
peoples out in the wilderness that they have to contend with, but it devolves into Hal Holbrook and one of the other characters basically taking one of the last survivors who's fallen into sort of a catatonic state. They rig up sort of a gurney to essentially hike him through the wilderness with no shoes, no boots on, and they're all exhausted and bloody and dirty, and then they're having to fight off this other presence. It's an incredible film. TV Guide gave it 1 out of 5 stars, calling it a cheap north of the border ripoff of Deliverance. And then Leonard Maltin, who could not be any more wrong, gave it 1.5 out of 4 stars, calling it just simply unpleasant.
That's a
Like, what did he give
clarion call
Deliverance?
for us, right?
I don't know what
Yeah.
Leonard Maltin gave Deliverance, but I'm here to tell Leonard Maltin he is like straight up wrong
Leonard
about this
Maltin,
film.
unlike the Roger Ebert would have his horror movies that he liked.
Right.
Leonard Maltin, I don't think I think he's got a disdain for the genre.
Oh, I think you're right. I think you're right.
Oh, Leonard Maltin gave Deliverance 4 stars
Oh yeah. See,
Oh,
there you go.
interesting. Well,
there
yeah.
you go.
Snob.
He
because
felt-
he said it had 2 of the most terrifying film villains in history. So we know what Leonard Maltin's fear is.
Right. There are definitely film villains in this, and it's a strange and it's a peculiar tale, which I'm not going to go into because it would be a massive spoiler, other than to say stick around till the very end because it is an absolute shocker, and the whole thing just getting to the shocker at the end is an exhausting, and to quote Leonard Maltin, unpleasant trip through the wilderness. All shot, as I say, in northern Ontario. It did get its premiere. I think it got its premiere in 1977 in Montreal, and then it was subsequently released in the United States in 1978. Super great film, Rituals. You can catch it on Shudder. Thank you, Shudder, for curating such a cool
Nice.
film. Eric.
All right. Well, since this is Canadian films, I had walked into this expecting the David Cronenberg Invitational,
Oh,
and so I think
So what's your entry?
so.
Yeah.
Mine. I'm going to the very beginning.
we will judge you.
Not The Fly, not Videodrome, not The Brood, not
oh.
Rabid, not Naked Lunch.
Oh, I know what you're doing.
Shivers.
Oh, I was going to think the other one that starts with an S. Scanners.
Scanners. No, yeah, okay,
Yeah.
yeah, right. This is 1975. This is his first
Yeah.
film, starring Paul Hampton as Roger St. Luc, the
Yep.
doctor, Lynn Lowry as Nurse Forsyth, his love interest, Joe Silver, who was terrific as Rollo Linsky, as kind of a skeevy consulting doctor.
Right.
Alan Coleman as an infected salesman, Susan Petrie as the concerned housewife, and Barbara Steele as an
Yeah.
elegant lesbian dilettante.
Yeah.
And they are all living in at the time, a super modern Montreal state-of-the-art building, apartment building, all by themselves on this island. And it is this sets the Cronenberg template: sex, parasites, body horror, sex and parasites and body horror all mashed together at the same time.
And I think one of the coolest sets ever.
Yeah, it is. It was still actually it was a real apartment building. And
Yeah.
And they would be having to film around actual residents in there. And considering the crazy antics that made up Shivers, because the whole notion of Shivers is that there is a parasite that has been lab cooked up that it's like a leech, and it goes for whatever orifice it can crawl into, and then it turns you into a libidinous maniac and essentially brainless, sex-craved fiends. And this was, I think at the time, it was done. There was a Canadian magazine called Saturday Night, and it was actually given Canadian funds, and they said, if we need to make movies like this to have a Canadian film industry, then we shouldn't have a Canadian film industry. And so it took a lot of heat. That this thing has some really nasty elements to it. It also, one of my favorite, and you can check out my dead list that I had for bathroom horror. It has the setting the template for bathtub horror scene.
Oh yeah,
where Barbara Steele is enjoying a glass of wine, relaxing in the bathtub, when a leech crawls up out of the drain and swims up between her legs, and then it is nasty. And she and of course it was Barbara Steele being the biggest star here. It was a lot of quick cuts, and then but you knew that she got invaded by these parasites. Now, one of the reasons why I picked this was I just had the opportunity to see Lynn Lowry, and I got to meet her at Queer Screams, which was a brand new festival here in Portland.
Right.
And she actually scooped a lot of dirt on this. She said that she had absolutely zero chemistry with Paul Hampton, and he kept forgetting his lines. And when we asked her, so how was it working with David Cronenberg? And she goes, he was fine. I didn't interact with him much because he had to keep on working with Paul so he could remember his lines. And she goes, what was it? And if you don't know who Lynn Lowry is, look her up. She looks like a fashion model when she was young.
Yeah,
she was like, why isn't he into me? I don't get this.
Right.
But she said she really enjoyed hanging out with Barbara Steele, who she said was a total pro,
right,
and really classy. And both of them really had a blast doing the pool sequence at the end of the film,
that scene is crazy.
Where
it's like so bonkers.
It's the whole apartment complex descends on Paul, who gets overwhelmed by zombies.
It's like a zombie sex orgy.
Yeah, it was an orgy.
Sex orgy
in a pool, and a slow motion thing with Lynn Lowry planting the kiss.
Right.
And the thing is that in classic Cronenbergian fashion, the kiss usually comes with like a bulge of the neck where you can see the parasite moving from one mouth,
right,
and then a bulge in the next person's mouth after they're kissing because the alien switches.
Yeah.
This movie for a while was Canada's most profitable movie ever.
Woo!
So that's one of the reasons why David Cronenberg went on to a long and storied career. One, the movie also is really pretty cool.
Yeah, I think it's great.
And
Rabid's great too, though.
Yeah, I mean,
but I like both of them.
Right, and they follow similar themes.
Oh,
sex and parasites.
They're
and
essentially the same movie,
right.
But yeah,
all of his films have similar themes.
Right.
Or just my body's falling apart.
Right.
My favorite bit though was when Nicholas Tudor, the salesman, wakes apparently from the dead, and attacks the assisting doctor, or the investigating doctor, who was Joe Silver, and he goes, "No, Tudor, no, don't, no," and he's just bludgeoning him to a pulp, and off screen, and it's just. And actually, Lynn Lowry was saying that was her favorite part in the whole movie too.
That's funny.
She really wished that she had scenes with Joe, because she said he was just a fantastic funny guy to be with.
Yeah.
So, anyways,
You know what's great about this film though is it's so like it's classic David Cronenberg in that he was always a futurist, and it's like it bridges this interesting gap between the free love of the 1960s and the AIDS epidemic of the 1980s, and it's this weird sort of middle spot where it's like, who would have thought that coming out of free love and going into AIDS that this would be on anybody's mind in this particular way. And yeah, it really does. It is kind of a clarion call to both the future and the past.
And Rabid and The Fly also follow similar templates. It's like I mean, The Fly was height of the AIDS epidemic.
Right. That's why I say this is like so prescient.
Yes,
because like The Fly is like it's like on the nose.
Right.
This is sort of a whole other level of future thinking.
Yep. And Mike will appreciate this. David Cronenberg has accused Dan O'Bannon for copying the idea of the parasite for Alien, and I suspect Dan O'Bannon, if we were alive today, would agree, as he references that he stole from all sorts of movies. He didn't steal from any one movie. He stole from all of them.
That's right. Not just Green Slime and Shivers, but every goddamn movie out there.
So if you're familiar with Cronenberg but you haven't seen Shivers, get on it. It is the template setter, and it's fun.
Yeah, I would say if you've never seen a David Cronenberg film, start with Shivers because it's an easy entry point.
Yeah.
Because it only gets weirder and grosser from there.
Yeah, the parasite is kind of rubbery, and it looks like it's clearly a little puppet on a string that gets pulled along. Looks like, but it's it's like covered in blood, and it crawls into and like when it's hanging half out of someone's mouth and it's twitching.
Yeah.
They were having, but apparently it was like one guy on they had a fishing pole with this giant leech on the other end, and they would jerk it back and forth to make it move. Classic.
Yeah.
I mean, that's like old school practical effects.
Or start with Scanners. That's the other one. Start with Scanners because Scanners was like Scanners. Yeah, because Scanners predated, I think, The Fly by 3 years, and it was clear that
it was 1982, I think, 1983.
83, yeah, and it was clear Cronenberg had a little bit of money and he could make a more modest, audience-friendly film.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Scanners. I mean, it's got one of the all-time great head exploding shots.
Yeah.
So, So go check out his whole catalog. Why don't you?
That's right.
Okay. So moving on.
Says Eric.
Says me, because it's like we're talking Canadians, eh? Liz, what is your number 2?
Okay. My number 2 movie is a movie that has absolutely terrible critical reviews.
Yeah.
It's a theme.
Yes. But this is an A24 movie from 2014 starring my personal favorite Canadian, Ryan Reynolds.
Yeah.
This is the Canadian thriller directed by Adam McGowan, who is a prolific Canadian director, and it's called The Captive. Adam McGowan, if the name sounds familiar, he debuted with Exotica, and then he made The Sweet Hereafter, which is probably his most famous film about the town where the whole bus full of children gets in an accident and they all die.
Mm-hmm.
And it's then like them dealing with their grief. This one is about a father played by Ryan Reynolds. And his daughter was kidnapped 8 years prior to the opening of the film, and it takes place non-linearly. So it's him and his estranged wife, played by Mireille Enos from The Killing. There's a pair of cops played by Scott Speedman, Canadian actor, and Rosario Dawson, just beautiful American, showing up there. There are creepy guys who may or may not be involved in the child sex ring. Bruce Greenwood, handsome Canadian actor, and Kevin Durant, who is such a character actor. You'll recognize him. He's just a scary looking guy.
But not a 6'10" basketball player.
No.
Kevin
No,
Durant.
Kevin Serge Durant. Yeah, Durand with
Durand.
a D. And so the daughter had been abducted 9 years before, and through some new technology, they find out that she is still alive and has been used by pedophiles to abduct new children into this ring.
Ugh.
You do not see any of that kind of stuff. You just see the emotional toll it takes on parents of a missing child, the police who are investigating the offenders, the priests and prosecutors investigating the offenders from Law and Order, the actual people who are in this horrible ring. So it's kind of three strands being braided together. I think it's a really successful thriller. The film critics did not. They said it should like him making light of such a serious situation. I didn't feel like it was making light of anything like that. It just seems like the horror was everybody's worst nightmare. And it does have a happy ending, so that's good. But I really like it. I think it's a super successful thriller. It's set in Niagara Falls, Ontario, so it is in Canada.
That counts.
Has ice skating. It has snow.
Barely.
Yeah.
Buffalo's practically Canada, ain't it?
Yeah. But Canadian cast, Canadian setting, Canadian director, Canadian, and it's A24. So I saw it when it came out in the theater in 2014. It got a limited release, and I enjoyed it.
What year was this done?
2014.
Okay, so I mean,
that was early in the A24 era.
Yeah, and Ryan Reynolds was already he was already a star, so
yeah. I mean, I don't know what year. That's probably why I went to see it. But Wilder is the first Ryan Reynolds movie I remember.
Right.
But it kind of went around. He did that one Buried recently after it, so it kind of like little one man shows for him. I like it. I think it's good performances from almost everybody. Adam McGowan also puts his wife in all his movies. Normally she's very good, but she's not in this. She's not Sherry Moon Zombie level, but she's not great. So if you're interested in that kind of film, if you want to watch a depressing thriller, pair this with what's the one?
Prisoners.
Like, how did that slip my mind? And you'll have the most bummer of a day you could ever have.
Just
I love it.
Stay away from downers if you're doing that, and don't drink anything because otherwise you won't wake up.
Right.
Yeah. Prisoners is a perfect movie though. This one's not perfect, but it's really good in my opinion. I'm not a critic.
No, you're a critic with your star ascendant. There you go, Liz.
Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah, so.
You are a critic, 100%. You're good enough. You're
smart enough. Gosh darn it! I think
you're critical enough.
Super Canadian.
You are critical enough. All right, this is a film. This is a 1961 film. Eric asked, "What was the first Canadian film?" I'm going to tell you.
Horror film.
Canadian horror film. I'm going to tell you what the first Canadian horror film is. This was originally released it was re-released as The Eyes of Hell, and I don't want to hear anybody say that we stole this idea, but it was also re-released as The Spooky Movie Show. We did not. This is not where we got Spooky Time with the Scariest Things podcast from. That was our own idea, and we haven't copyrighted it, so don't steal it. But we didn't steal it from this film, which was the 1961 Canadian surrealist horror film called The Mask. The Mask was, so it's not the first Canadian film of all time, and it's not the first Canadian horror film.
1961, they finally got into film.
Hey, what's this?
They got a late
this
start.
Film thing?
What's this?
Moving pictures? No way.
This was the first time that a film entirely produced by Canadians and filmed in Canada received wide international distribution.
Okay.
So that's the first here. The film was distributed by International Film Distributors in Canada, and then Warner Brothers picked it up internationally in 1961. And man, it is a William Castle esque oddity of a film that I wandered into as I was researching the best Canadian horror films, and everything I kept coming across that you got to see this movie. It's funny because the film is both incredibly remarkable and also sort of simultaneously like kind of boring. But it basically involves a psychiatrist, Dr. Alan Barnes, who comes across a mysterious ancient tribal mask after one of his patients committed suicide as a result of continually putting the mask on. And if you haven't guessed it already, the mask is a metaphor for addiction. But the film itself, so the doctor ends up with the mask, this weird looking skull like mask.
Yeah, it looks awesome. I'm DBing it right now.
Which is actually, it's based on some, South American artifact that exists in IRL. But this is what happens when you put the mask on, and the William Castle element that I referenced earlier. What happens is the film slips into 3D, and a voice comes over the screen, and it says, "Put the mask on now." And then everybody that went into the theater was given this mask, this like
3D glasses
this
in it?
green mask that had 3D glasses in it. You would put the mask on, and then you would slide into, I kid you not, some of the craziest psychedelic scenes I've ever seen in my life, and they're all in 3D. He slips the mask on.
Overlook, if you're listening, please make this the next.
I know.
The William Castle experience with the Tingler was so good.
Yeah, this totally outshines the Tingler. He slips the mask on 3 times. So 3 times throughout the film, you slip into this weird psychedelic odyssey that there's no dialogue, and it does not make a goddamn bit of sense at all. And it's just, to see it is to believe it. It's pretty darn incredible. Some of the critics were not exactly favorable
Another theme
about the film, primarily because of they felt that a lot of the nightmare sequences were, quote, tacky, and that the Globe and Brad Wheeler of the Globe and Mail said that it was limited to genre fetishists, which I love that term, and I consider myself to be a genre fetishist. Limited to genre fetishists and popcorn chomping ironists, which I guess
Ironists?
Ironists.
Ironists?
Ironists.
Irony? Okay.
Yeah, ironists.
I think
yeah.
I'm one of those.
Yeah. I know. I think I'm definitely a genre fetishist and a popcorn chomping ironist. Chris Koffel of Bloody Disgusting did say that the psychedelic visuals and the B-movie elements that were brought to the table in the same vein as William Castle made it very, very enjoyable. We will when we post this episode, we will definitely be posting a picture of the mask that the audiences have to wear, because it is an absolute hoot.
I bet you could hunt on eBay.
And try to get
one of those masks, or someone can do a replica, because everything's getting redone nowadays for Comic-Cons and stuff like that. Someone's got to be making one of those.
This is all I will say, and I've kind of hinted at this already, but it really is a remarkable film in that, in 1961, we talk a lot about 1961. We talk about Peeping Tom, we talk about Psycho, we talk about all these films of the time. Man, this is far weirder and far wilder than either of those films ever was, and it's kind of hard to think that, God, this was made in 1961. It's pretty darn bonkers.
The Canadians, I don't think, were probably subject to the Hays Code.
There's a whole it's funny you mentioned that, because there is a whole sort of secondary subtext to this film and the Hays Code, and why this was one of the first Canadian horror films ever produced. Look it up online and take a deep dive into The Mask.
There you go. Because if you think about it, Peeping Tom, British film, Black Sunday, Italian film.
Yep.
These are the films that were sort of knocking the pins down of the Hays Code. So
exactly.
This one got to play in that same.
That's right.
Sandbox.
Yep.
All right. Well, before I step into my next film, I forgot one other great little tidbit from Shivers.
Oh yeah.
So apparently, one of the things that David Cronenberg liked to do, or as a young director, the only way he knew how to motivate and get one of his young actresses to cry was to slap her.
Oh,
and that was
the William Friedkin special.
This is
like
old
Lars
school
von Trier.
directors kind of stuff. And Lynn Lowry was on. He said, "Hey, did do you need me to slap you around to get you crying? It's like, no, I can act. And so it's like there's a
Good for
smackdown.
her. And Cronenberg's still
yeah.
making movies.
Well,
We
but the
haven't
thing is that
seen
he
him
probably,
Right.
but here's the best part is that he probably stopped that kind of a nonsense because when Susan Petrie, after she got slapped around, Barbara Steele got word of it, and she lifted up Cronenberg by his lapels and threatened to beat the shit out of him.
Woo!
And I was like, ooh man, that'd be great on your tombstone. It's like, I got beaten up by Barbara Steele. So, anyways, that was just another fun little aside. Yes, it's like for the S&M kind of things. Barbara Steele. All right, so the next movie that I have on my docket actually contains the name of a Canadian town in it. Do you know what that would be?
Hang on. Thank you. It's got a town, not a province.
Nope. It's Pontypool, Ontario.
Oh, yeah.
Directed by Bruce McDonald, starring Stephen McHattie as Grant Mazzy, a radio shock jockey.
That's right.
And his producer, Lisa Houle, playing Sydney Breyer, and his technical assistant, Georgina Riley, who plays Laurel Ann. And the three of them are going through their routines and in the radio station being the voice of Pontypool. And they're actually sort of horsing around and talking with their man in the air, who's actually just a guy who's beating his chest to make a helicopter noise for the radio. And word comes in that people are acting very strange, and that they're attacking people, and that they're biting people, and it's largely done like not surprisingly, a radio play.
Right.
It greatly inspired by the Orson Welles production of War of the Worlds, which was you got to listen to and you could imagine, and it was so terrifying for people that, famously, people thought that actually we were being invaded by Martians and were panicking. And you get that same kind of a narrative style with a lot of the dialogues between Grant Mazzy and his audience who are calling in, and eventually they start repeating words.
Right.
And they stop making sense. And it turns out that what is driving them mad is that there's a virus being transmitted through the English language, and it was and it's the ultimate. It's the earworm that drives you literally crazy.
Right.
So it's this fascinating idea of and this was I think originally based on a novel by Tony Burgess called Pontypool Changes Everything.
Right.
And there's the thing that I really loved about this movie. It's a stage drama.
Yeah.
And it's still, and there's the quiet. And when I talked about the vastness and the isolation of Canadian life, this really felt like it, right? It's cold and snowy out. And,
for
and
sure.
you felt that these people were sort of trapped in this little community in northern Ontario, and they couldn't. Just like, what the hell is going on, And then the Laurel Ann she picks it up and she starts going crazy, and she bites off her own bottom lip, and so everybody sort of holds up inside the sound booth. And there's a doctor who comes in who announces, I think I figured out what it is. And they, it was kind of like, what? Okay, well, we'll roll with it. But it is, I think it's lyrical in the way that this thing plays out. I loved just the Stephen McHattie just chews up the scenery, and they do lots of close-ups with him in the microphone, and he's got that
voice is
wonderful
the voice for
voice.
radio. Yeah, it's wonderful.
It's he could he
read the phone.
He could have, yes, that's right. And
the what again?
But he also when like he would get his his inflections and the watching him act out to the microphone was a real treat. It's kind of a short story in a way. I didn't feel like I think this would be right up you guys' alley.
Yeah.
I think it was like like an 80-minute film, but I think this one captured sort of the essence of trapped in a Canadian town,
Right.
And doing zombies but not zombies, and saying something about, because I forget what song it was. Oh, I had an awful song caught in my head the other day. It was Jennifer Lopez, "Let's Get Loud," and I don't know where I was like,
What?
It's like, how can I get this out of my head? Let's get loud. Let's get loud.
That's like you put it
And
in
it's
everybody else's head.
No. Okay, so there you go. If you all of a sudden go insane because of "Let's Get Loud," it's Pontypool and Eric Lee's fault. So, Pontypool 2008. It is a treat. It's not hard to find. You should be able.
2008. It's that old. Wow.
Yeah, it is. That's No, I liked the fact that it was sort of set. It was like a sort of almost like a one act play set in a single location. Right. I thought that was a pretty clever element.
And the studio lighting where the booth is brightly lit and the rest of the studio is dark, I think was a really good set design. And it felt like, it really did feel like a Broadway set. In fact, hey, there you go. Someone could do a stage play of this.
A stage play, for sure.
You totally could do that.
You know what I think this movie would pair really well with is Vast of Night.
Yes, it would.
Yeah.
Like, that would be a really good double feature.
Yes.
Well, you know what it actually
the talking, like
and the visual sense and the fact that you sink into those monologues, these fantastic monologues. No, that was New Mexico.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right.
No, you know what it kind of reminded me of when I first watched it? A very non-horror film with Andy Griffith in the late 50s called A Face in the Crowd, because I thought the whole spoken word thing was an allegory for kind of right-wing AM radio politics, right? And
sure.
And that's how you get how all these like crazy conspiracy theories get passed on and people become rabid as a result of hearing all this garbage constantly coming through.
I think you're on to something, Mike.
I really like that. It's based on a book, and I actually think it's a trilogy.
Yeah. Pontypool changes everything. That's the name of the book.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
All right.
Liz,
what do you got?
Okay.
What do you got?
For my final film, I think this might be the most polarizing, and I'm putting in air quotes, movie that has come out recently.
What? I know it. I know
Owen
what it is.
Gleiberman from Variety said, "It's a film that asks for and rewards patience and can therefore invite revolt. Yet if you go with it, you may feel that you've touched the uncanny."
Oh,
and
I know.
this is 2022's Skinamarink.
Yep.
2022/2023. So this is written and directed by Kyle Edward Ball. It's filmed in his childhood home in Edmonton, Canada. He also is a youngster. He is 31 years young.
Go Oilers.
Yeah. This film debuted last summer at Fantasia. I got to see it when I was screening that. And then it got pirated, so it ended up showing up on YouTube, and like parts of it were on TikTok, and all
that's
over the
where I
internet
saw
people
it.
were like, is this real?
I saw the pirated
internet.
copy. Yeah.
Oh, shame, Michael. Shame.
Wait, what? I thought that's what we were supposed to be doing.
No. So then AMC and who owns IFC Midnight, picked it up, and they released it in the United States and Canada in January of this year. It was shot for $15,000 and has grossed, at the time of the Wikipedia was updated, about $1 million. So did really, really well. And so the quote unquote plot is in 1995, 4-year-old Kevin injures himself in what his 6-year-old sister Kaylee says is a sleepwalking episode. They go to the hospital and he's brought back home. And when they wake up in the middle of the night, they find that their father has disappeared, and so have the windows, the doors, and other objects in their house. So it's really just two kids who you never really see full on in their house, kind of sitting in front of their TV at the middle of the night, looking for their parents, and doors and windows and things are going away. And you hear voices, you hear sounds, you hear, knocking upstairs. The toilet disappears, like weird stuff keeps happening. And nothing happens.
But
the main
everything
star
happens.
of the film is that it's called the chatter telephone. You know what it is. It's that
the
tiny kid's
Fisher
toy
Price
that has
TV
little eyes
telephone.
that goes back and forth. It rings really, really loud. It's an experimental art film. It is 100 minutes long. And when I got to see it in the theater, dead quiet, not one peep out of anybody. I was super fully immersed. When I saw it for Fantasia, I kind of multitasked and was like, what is this? I mean, I'm trying to watch a film that's completely in the dark inside of my house. You can't see what's happening.
Right.
Because I don't have a theater. So I just
very little dialogue.
Yeah. No, oh my God. Probably if you counted it, like 20 words of dialogue.
Yeah.
So Mike, when you said to your other film that there was no dialogue and it doesn't make a bit of sense at all, like that could be Skinamarink.
Yeah.
But I think that it was cool as hell. It was creepy as hell. Like I agree. If you are willing to sit there and you get to see it in a quiet room that's super dark and you just want to have the feeling of it wash over you and you just like weird, creepy shit, you're going to like this. If you want a slasher film or a plot-driven movie, this is not for you.
No, absolutely not. Yeah, the first time I saw it, I was really frustrated with it, I think as a lot of people were. But then I kind of went back and rewatched sort of the latter part of it, which does kind of pick up towards the end. And I was like, I gave it a little bit more grace and thought, okay, well, maybe I was being a little too hard on the experimental nature of it. But Liz, do you think is this going to wind up on your end of the year best of list? All right.
Yes, it will. And I'll put a little asterisk next to it that technically it came out in 2022, but it wasn't released until 2023.
No, I considered it a 2023 film because it's a theatrical release.
Is it going to end up on your end of the year list?
There's a lot of good films, maybe.
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
I don't know. I mean, it's again I got sleepy.
I got sleepy. I think either you need to be like completely in the dark with your headphones on your laptop, little screen immersed, or you need to be in a theater, like watching it on the big screen. I feel like it's divisive in the way that we're able to view it. Also, like
I saw it streaming, and that was on my couch, and it was just like. I thought it was fascinating. I think I have the same kind of a thing. Like Mad God for me was that kind of a thing where it was didn't make a whole lot of sense. Didn't make any sense, but it was a visual spectacle, and it was the ideas. I mean, it was still the fact that it had no plot didn't take away from the artistry and the messaging, and some of the the stunning stuff that they showed, and yet there was no story.
Yeah,
and it was, and that one also made me sleepy at times. But it was, I think I have a great deal of respect for both of them. One of them, the little film that could from Canada, and the other one, a lifetime experiment by one of the greatest animators that Hollywood isn't known, doing the weird, disgusting stuff that couldn't be shown on for most audiences.
Yep.
But I just think for me, I normally, I like police procedurals. I like a plot. Like this is not my kind of movie, but I really, really loved it.
Yeah, there was something darkly enchanting about it.
Yeah.
Ooh, darkly enchanting.
I like that.
All right. Well, let me wake you guys up.
Okay.
Sleepy heads with a 1981 Canadian slasher film directed by George Mahalka and written by John Beard. This is My Bloody Valentine, starring.
I didn't know that was Canadian.
Starring Paul Kellman, Laurie Hallier, and Neil Affleck, who is also in Scanners. Yeah. This is the plot tells the film is about a group of young adults who decide to throw a Valentine's party only to incur the wrath of a maniac in mining gear who begins a killing spree that he maybe started 20 years earlier. This was all shot on location in the Sydney mines in Nova Scotia in 1980, and it shows. I know that when they were looking for film locations, they looked at a bunch of different ones, but they decided to they landed on the Princess Collier mine in Sydney Mines, Nova Scotia. I guess the city is literally named Sydney Mines. Sydney Mines, Nova Scotia, and apparently the mine had closed in 1975. So because the other mine was in Glacier Bay, Nova Scotia, and still functional, they decided this would be a lot easier to do all of the film work, plus the one that they finally landed on was much more dreary and cold and dusty, and there was no buildings around. And so to your point, Eric, it did create that very isolated, rural, remote Canadian kind of vibe. The film, I loved this little factoid. When they released it, of course, at the height of the slasher epidemic of the 1980s, they wanted I can't remember if it was the producer or somebody else wanted something slightly different, and they were like, no. They wanted to call it something completely differently as well, and then they said no. This is getting named after a holiday. And
did they release it on for the Valentine's weekend?
Oh yeah. It got released. It was theatrically released on February 11th, 1981 by Paramount Pictures, but they initially wanted to just do it as a straight up slasher film and not tie it at all to Valentine's Day. But when the film originally was, they tried to slide it through the MPAA, the Motion Picture Association of America, with an R rating. The MPAA required cuts to every single film or every single scene in the film, and even after they did that, they still came back and said, nope, it's still rated X and you still need to cut more.
Wow.
Dang. Is there a director's cut
There is a
out there, you think?
There
Have
is
you
a
seen
director's cut that was
Okay.
just released on 4K, I think.
Like Vinegar Syndrome or something like that?
No, not
Yeah,
Vinegar
sounds like
Syndrome.
something they would do, though.
But yeah, it was released I think it was last year on 4K, and you can see, I don't know how much of the original cut was made it into the 4K release, but I think quite a bit of it did. And there was obviously the sequel that we saw, My Bloody Valentine in 3D.
It was good.
But in 2021, there was a fan-made film called Valentine's Bluff, which takes place 40 years after the events of the original film and follows some of the same characters. So, yeah, My Bloody Valentine is that one special Canadian film that keeps on giving. Not only is it shot in a mine, it's in Nova Scotia, but I think, and this was not something that the MPAA cut out of the film, but in almost every single scene, somebody has a moose head lager in their hand. A moose head or a cigarette, and everybody does have a flannel shirt on throughout the entire film. So I don't think you're going to find a more Canadian horror film.
There you go.
Yeah.
Well,
maybe we will.
I don't know.
Maybe we will.
Well, I've got a movie that you reviewed. Probably, I think this is a 2019 film, I believe. Blood Quantum.
Oh yeah.
This is Aboriginal Native Canadian take on the zombie apocalypse.
So good.
And sad to say that the director Jeff Barnaby died last year. I think he had cancer.
Oh.
So so he really hit a lot on the right notes with this one, and I think
so good
because the long and sad story of the native peoples of this continent and what they got put through. And if you think that the notorious European conquistadors, furriers, and colonizers brought plagues of diseases that nearly destroyed the native peoples of the Western Hemisphere with smallpox, cholera, influenza, measles, scarlet fever, syphilis, just to name a few, that they had no defenses for. And it essentially, crippled the populations and made, frankly, made it easier for westward expansion. The premise of this is tables have turned.
Yeah.
This time it's the native peoples who are resistant to a strain of virus that's turning non-indigenous peoples into zombies. So pretty much straight up classic zombies. And the question comes, whether these communities, the tribal communities, are going to allow the vulnerable Caucasians who are begging to be let in to pass the defenses, whether they see it in their hearts to let them to give them refuge. And there are splits within the community. There are some which is this is the right thing to do. It's the human thing to do. And it's like, fuck them.
Right.
No, after all we've gone through, this is our time to rise. And
Yep.
And those tensions are beautifully played out. Of course, there's a young hothead named Lysol, played by Kiowa Gordon, who really steals the show as the angry young man who essentially puts the whole community at risk by sabotaging things to get rid of the whiteys,
Right.
as it were, to get that they. Because the fact of the matter is, you may be immune to the disease, but you're not immune to the violence.
Right.
Right. The zombies are still dangerous, and I think there are some the beautiful allegories aside. It's a great zombie movie.
Oh, it's so good.
And
so good.
I particularly like. There's the big stoic. You always have to have the big stoic Indian guy.
Right.
Brandon Oakes plays Bumper, and he's got a brand new chainsaw that he puts to great use. It is a lot of fun. It's really bloody, but it's I think that there's a good love story in there between. There's the other, because the Lysol the main character is there's a father-son combination,
right,
and they are the ones who are the voices of reason. But they still have a full understanding of what this means to their community, and it's great because you can follow along. I mean, partly it's like you don't necessarily want to get educated in a zombie movie, but it's poignant, and I was it's like in a way it's kind of like when the tribe goes full hero mode, it's a wonderful ride, but it also carries with it this dark kind of the. And it's almost like the Black Panther Eric Killmonger, who plays a villain who goes, "We've been wronged, and these are my grievances, and I'm going to and I'm going to make them pay." Right. And you can it was a totally understandable point of view from this guy Lysol, and I just thought that this was just a wonderful take on this, and we've had a few.
My number one film of 2020.
Yeah,
number one.
Oh, wow, okay.
Number one film. Yeah. I like the fact that the origin of the zombie outbreak was super unclear too.
Yep.
Where it was like, it's not a virus. It's not some sort of government concocted conspiracy. It's not science. It's just that the planet is sick of our shit.
Yeah.
Right.
I
thought what
environmental the Earth is cleaning house.
Right. It's like, what a great way to tie back to Native American traditions and their connection to
they get spared because
First Peoples traditions. Yes. First Peoples traditions.
And there's all these the kinds of terminology, the First Nations. Like in Canada, I think that's the you see that a lot. If you go up to Vancouver, they've got a great exhibition in the Natural History Museum where they're trying to preserve the speech of First Nations, because there's so many tribes,
Right.
and trying to keep it alive. And so this was, it was refreshing. There was another one, and I'm trying to remember the was the Inuit one that I watched that was part of South by Southwest from last year. Its name's escaping me now.
Oh, I know the one you're talking about.
Oh my
That
gosh.
was 2 years ago,
Yeah.
Eric.
2 years ago. Yeah.
Yeah.
God,
my.
time is flying past.
Yeah.
Slashback.
Flashback. Yeah.
Yeah.
There you go.
That is another one that was, and it felt refreshing because it's just another point of view, or even Prey from last year. It's like,
Yeah.
okay, all right, it's like representation, but representation when it actually feels integral to the story and tells a great story is a winner.
Yeah. Was Prey shot in Canada?
Yes.
Oh.
It
that,
was shot in Manitoba.
okay.
Yeah, because
Okay.
it's like there's not, if you're looking for untouched Rocky Mountain wilderness,
Right.
it's like Colorado, you might find some, maybe in Wyoming, but it's like no roads.
Yeah.
It had to look like the 17th century.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So anyhow, blood quantum, that's the other side of Canadian horror. Eh?
Yeah.
I want to throw out a couple of alsos.
Yeah.
Anything for Jackson.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I think the great thing
So
for
good. That was on my top 10 list of whatever year that was.
anything for Jackson really plays on.
I think that was
how-
also 2020.
2020. Yeah,
Yeah.
and it's nice Canadians doing
Yeah.
satanic things.
Right.
And
For the good of bringing back their grandson.
right.
That's right.
And I almost went to. I'm going to go 2 episodes sort of in a row, mentioning Backcountry.
Mm-hmm.
This is another one. This is again scariest bear ever, and it's all about the noise. It's like there's like a quick cuts, but you like when you hear someone screaming and it sounds like they're just being ripped apart, and you hear the bear going for it.
Yeah.
You can picture it. It's like Jaws. It's like the opening sequence in Jaws where the girl gets pulled under from the shark.
Yeah.
Bear does the same thing. It's brilliantly played. And then Hammer of the Gods, last one, which was a bunch of washed up musicians go out to the Canadian wilderness to do tabs of acid and rekindle their musical mojo, and it fails, and instead it summons a bunch of spirits that come out and destroy them. So
There you go.
Hammer of the Gods / Archons. They changed the name of that thing.
I'm going to mention 2 films that were super weird and were very close to making my list, and it was Pin from 1989, which is a really bonkers film. Pin is short for Pinocchio.
Oh, holy moly!
Yeah, it's a wild film from 1989. You can see it on, and it stars Terry O'Quinn from Lost.
Yep.
You can see it on YouTube. There's a ripped copy on YouTube,
And he was the stepfather, wasn't he?
yeah, and then
Does
Kathy's
he play Pinocchio?
no,
Does
no,
he play Geppetto?
no. He plays.
Does he play the whale?
He
Stromboli?
plays a physician that has basically one of the
whale.
anatomically correct dummies who is effectively his Pinocchio.
Oh, ew.
Yeah, it's
Oh.
super weird. And then Kathy's Curse from 1977. Both of those are sort of Hallmark movie channel-esque, almost made for TV movies, but they are super duper weird and very quintessentially Canadian in both cases.
You just mentioned sort of the Hallmark movies.
Yeah.
And then we'll go to Liz. But anything for Jackson, the director, Justin K. Dyke, his stock and trade, and he's done dozens of them, are Hollywood or Hallmark Christmas movies.
That's right.
I think they film
romance
them
movies.
like all in Canada.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And so it's
You got to
it's
have a Christmas tree farm. You got to have the snow.
Yeah.
Like, you
And
got
it's
to
like- and
always
it's
have
like-
your cup
yeah.
of coffee.
dependable snowfall, but it's like
Also,
he's got-
a guy that looks handsome in a plaid
Right.
flannel.
Right.
That's right.
And there's usually like a princessy type of longing and the perfect man who's and like the woman who's like, I have to ditch my career to find my true self and find romance.
Yep.
Hallmark.
We will not be doing
Got to
an
leave the big
episode.
city and go to Canada.
We will not be doing an episode on that.
That's for
I'll
that's
bring it back
a different
around.
that's a different wheel of misfortune.
Yeah.
Another one that I really like that is actually not set in Canada, but it's a Canadian team and Canadian actors is Grave Encounters.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
the Vicious
Yeah.
Brothers. And I believe the film of it was like they're going to investigate a thing that's in like Minnesota or something. So I don't know why, but everything else about it is Canadian. So that's
That's
fun found footage.
That's a part of the triumvirate of paranormal encounters, and I think I would put it with Insidious and
Around the same time.
It doesn't belong in the same pantheon as Blair Witch, but that's a big ask.
But
Grave Encounters is really good found footage.
Yeah.
Now I have not seen. I believe there's 2 sequels that I have not.
I've seen the first
but-
2. They're both pretty solid. I mean, you get what you pay for, right? It's you know that they're actually going out there doing the
Their
ghost
budget
hunter
was
things, and it was really-
120,000. I'm looking at their Wikipedia.
and those must have made $10 million at least.
yeah, they got more than what they paid for on that.
Totally.
Or maybe it was Canadian dollars, which
So-
Yeah,
now
there
I
you go.
think are better. I don't know.
Loonies. That's what they call them, isn't it? Or those the 50-cent pieces, the loonies.
That's $1
The
piece.
Canadian dollar's a loony.
Yeah.
So Liz, rumor has it that you've got a good tagline.
Oh boy, do I! My tagline that I'm going to take us out with is from Curtains, and it is 6 beautiful girls trying to get ahead. When the curtains fall, 5 will be dead.
Yeah.
Yeah.